Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of the Parent Playing Video Game Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about Diablo 2. We're going to go over our normal categories here. We're going to go over the gameplay with the story. We're going to go over the music, time commitments, that kiddable ranking per se, and then we're going to give it a conclusion. So first off, I want to say Diablo 2 was released way back, as we always like to say, back in 2000. I remember we got it, we loved it. Right from the get-go, the original Diablo, my brother and I played tons of, and this one, I think when it came out, I'm sure we jumped on it right away to pick it up, and it kind of took everything from the original and just sort of made it better. I'll get on to a little bit later, but the expansion pack, Lord of Destruction, when that came out, I kind of just took it up to that next level once again, sort of thing. So I do remember a very good memory of Diablo 1 actually was way back when we were living in Trinidad, and my brother and I, my brother was playing and I was watching him. My brother's older, so that's usually how we play games together, of course, right? Anyway, so I remember watching him play in Diablo 1, and I remember the goatmen and the sound that they made, and that kind of was just a really very good core memory sort of thing. And again, I remember when Diablo 2 came out, we both were very heavily into it, quite liked it. And as I said, yeah, the Lord of Destruction expansion just made it even better. So I'm going to quickly talk about what I've been playing recently. This Diablo 2 Resurrected, I have not actually played anything else in the last 2 or so weeks. This has just kind of captured my attention. I've been really enjoying it. I've not been playing a huge amount, but I've been putting in a decent amount of time. I'm level 50 something right now. So, I've been putting in some time, and, as I say with these podcasts, I never know what I'm going to do next. I might have an idea, but I'm also, sometimes I just get inspired. And that's what it was for this. I was just playing it. I'm like, you know what? It's on my big list. I have a big list of games that I definitely want to talk about. And this was on it. And I'm like, oh, why don't I take the opportunity to talk about it now? Since I'm playing it, it's fresh in my mind. It is way deeper than I remember. Might as well just, hey, let's talk about it and see how people think. So that is what I have been playing. Who knows if that'll be the exact same in the next 2 weeks. I might take a little break so that I can get a little shake up and talk about a different game, but hey, we'll see, I guess, right? So the game takes place right after Diablo 1, or at least pretty close to being after Diablo 1. So Diablo 1, as the spoiler of it would be, is you are the hero of sorts, right? You're playing whatever, you go down into hell, you beat Diablo, and then what you do to kind of contain Diablo's soul and make sure he doesn't wreak havoc again is that you take his, soul stone, his kind of essence, and jam it in your head. It goes in your head, and then now you're, as the hero, you've contained it, you've saved the day, everyone's happy, yay, blah, blah, blah. Some time goes on. I don't think it's a huge amount of time. And then all of a sudden, that hero that you were is now not doing super great. It's pretty obvious. He put the essence of Diablo, the devil, in himself. He's not going to do super great. So he kind of just starts going. He starts walking. He's got something that has kind of controlling him that tells him to do something. And how Diablo 2's story is told is actually kind of from the point of some random guy. I don't want to say he's maybe like a homeless guy of sorts, but like he's just kind of like he's almost like a wanderer himself. This character is considered the wanderer, this guy that has that essence of Diablo in him. So Morius is the gentleman that is sort of narrating the story to you, or at least you're hearing it from him sort of thing. And he is the one that's sort of saying, I was following him and we did this and this and this kind of thing. The Wanderer has, I think he says something along the lines of that. It's got this like dark aura that seems to be pushing him towards something. Morius follows him, and I'm not even 100% sure why. I don't know if he had, some reward out of it, or it was just kind of he felt almost possessed to do it himself. So he's following the Wanderer, You start off in Act 1, the base game, and I'm going to be comparing, or not necessarily comparing, but I'll be talking about the base game, which is Act 1, 2, 3, 4, as well as Lord of Destruction, which is Act 5. We'll go over a few of the things that I remember changing from one to the other. There are tons. We're definitely not going to get into all that. It would take a lot of work and time, so we're not going to get into that. But as I said, the story, you start in Act 1. On this one here, you kind of have to follow through the wilderness area kind of thing. The town that you're in is called a rogue encampment, has some rogues, archers, lady archers that are in there. It's all ruins, it's grassy, it's wet. I actually really like Act 1 a lot. I like the way that the areas, the above areas, not the dungeons, are kind of built fairly straightforward. Nothing too crazy. And also, when I say that, how the areas are built, if you're not aware, Diablo 1, I'm pretty sure Diablo 1 had this as well, but Diablo is quite known for its procedurally generated kind of worlds. So as you continue on, when you load up the game, the levels are not the same. And if you play online character versus offline, every single time you load it up, the areas are completely different. They may have some sort of constraints in a sense that, a certain exit will always be at the top right of the screen or something along those lines. But for the most part, yeah, it's completely random. And that obviously, as we get later on to replayability, that adds a lot to it. Personally, when I've been playing it, I've been playing in the offline single player mode, and that one doesn't randomize each time you load up the game. And I mean, I'm okay with that sort of thing. It makes when you kind of do some grinding, you want to always take out a specific boss because they have a good chance of dropping a really good item. It makes it a little bit easier, to be honest with you. Again, I'm not looking to play this game personally, especially right now, on a min-maxing kind of thing. I just want to play it for fun. Play, pick it up later, play kind of thing. I'm not looking to really focus on it. So, anyway, back to the acts. So Act 1 ends in the catacombs and ends with you fighting one of the lesser evils, which is Endariel. Not a crazy difficult boss. She poisons you kind of thing, but I mean, again, nothing in this is too crazy hard. It is challenging, don't get me wrong, but if you can just grind to level up. You can get better items. There's always something better out there. So if you have a hard time with something, you can always go back a few levels kind of thing and either grind through it, gain some levels, or you can, look at getting different items. Act 2, after that, it goes into Loot Lane, which is a desert area. Personally, it's probably my least liked area in the game. The enemies are... or I guess the open areas, the above ground areas are so sparse with enemies and they're so open that there's just so few enemies to actually attack. So I feel like you're just walking around, running around with nothing to do, and then you attack a few and then walk around, nothing to do. It's not like the giant, hordes of enemies that you'd see in Diablo 3. This is definitely not that, quite the opposite. So I'm not a huge fan of that part. However, it does have one area called the Arcane Sanctuary, and that one's really cool. I quite like that. The enemies in there, it's kind of like 4 directions on where you can go, and they kind of have a different creation of the level. Like some are stairs, some are just like platforms, some are teleportation parts. So that one's kind of cool, and you can usually get some pretty good items in there and gain some good experience if you needed to grind on that too. Act 2 ends with you taking out a evil, I think it's a lesser evil called Duriel. That one is a tough one. It slows you down with ice and it hits you really, really hard, and knocks you back. So you're very slow, you get knocked back, and it's just, hard. Then you go into Act 3. So Act 3 is the Kuras Docks. This one's kind of it's a wet forest area. A lot of these places are wet, except... Oh, sorry, I guess only Act 1 and 2, 3 are wet. Act 2 is definitely not wet, it's a desert. Wet forest area. Kind of the beginning it's okay. I mean, again, it's nowhere near as bad as the Loot Lane. It's fine, though. It kind of, you just run around, and then eventually you get to almost like this town-like area where you have Lower Kurast, the Kurast Bazaar, Upper Kurast, and then you get to, I think it's called the Travinkiel. I actually don't really know how to say it, but yeah, that one's cool because those areas I quite like. You get into the sewers, which is kind of a slog. It's huge and not the easiest to kind of traverse through, but nonetheless, you get through there, and then you get into the final boss of that act is Mephisto, and he's a good boss. That is definitely one of the bosses that if you want to grind and do runs on, so then you can get those better items, that's definitely one of the bosses you would do that with for sure. I believe he's one of the greater evils. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not going to try and get that hard into the story because I don't actually know the difference between the primevals, there you go, not greater evils, sorry, the primevals and the lesser evils and why and what sort of thing. It has a really cool story. The whole Diablo lore stuff is really cool. And just quickly to touch on that, I know I'm scatterbrained, but it's how I'm feeling tonight. So there's 3 primevals, which is Diablo, Mephisto, and Baal, and then there's the lesser evils, which I mean I know that Endariel's one. Duriel, I feel like that makes sense, is one, or it's just some random creature that is on the side of the evils. Nonetheless, you've defeated Act 3, you've moved on to Act 4. Now, Act 4 is literally hell. You start off in the Pandemonium Fortress, and then you walk down into steps, and you're pretty much in hell. You eventually walk through a few areas, and you get to the River of Flame, which is literally a river of flame. It's hell. Like, it really is hell here. If you haven't heard, it's hell. So once you get through there, you get to a place called the Chaos Sanctuary. Now, this is the final area of the base game of Diablo 2 itself. This one is weird. So all the other acts, Act 1, 2, and 3, and then 5 in the expansion, they all have about maybe 10 or so, 10 or 12, I don't know exactly, but they each have 10 or so waypoints in the whole act. So it makes the acts roughly around the same size. They're not exactly the same size, but for the most part, yes, same size. Pandemonium Fortress, or sorry, Act 4, that one has 3 waypoints, including the Pandemonium Fortress. It is incredibly small. So it's kind of, I don't know why they made it so short. It kind of sucks because of that. I mean, the final area, the Chaos Sanctuary, when you get there, that one's really cool. Very hard enemies that are in there for sure. But again, I'd say that was probably, at least back in the day before the expansion, that was a great place to grind levels. And then, of course, at the end of Act 4, you're fighting off Diablo. The Diablo is a challenging boss for sure. He has a very cool kind of like lightning sort of blast attack, which just melts away your health. But funny enough, it does not affect your mercenaries. And quick aside on mercenaries, actually no, we'll deal with mercenaries later. But it doesn't affect the mercenaries, so it actually makes mercenaries kind of useful against him. But yeah, it's a tough fight for sure. But you know, once you kind of get the hang of it and know what his attacks are, he only has a handful. It's not too hard. Again, Diablo is a pretty decent boss to run to try and get good items and things like that. But Mephisto, I think, from my memory, is a much better option kind of thing. I don't know if the rolls are better or if it's just maybe easier to get to, so it's quicker. But nonetheless, so as I said, that's the end of Diablo 2. And we're done. That's it. The expansion, Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction, that introduces Act 5, which is Harrogath. Harrogath is at the base of a mountain called Ariat Peak. And the Ancients, which are at the peak of Ariat Peak, yeah, sure. They're 3 kind of barbarians. So the whole area is all barbarians. That's what they are, the people that are there. So when you get up there, it's 3 ancient barbarians. They're spirits of sorts, and you have to, I think, kind of prove yourself to them. So you go up there, they kind of wake up. Now that is a tough fight. They hit hard and fast, and there's the 3 of them, so you can't it's not just a one-on-one fight kind of thing. You are constantly being barraged from all sorts of angles. One of them has ranged attack, one of them does a whirlwind attack. They're a tough fight for sure. That isn't even the final boss too, because once you're done that, then you move on into the next area. Can't remember actually exactly what it's called, but you move on to the next area and you get down into there, and that gets you to Baal. So as I mentioned earlier, the 3 primevals, Diablo, Mephisto, and Baal. We've already taken out 2 of them in the original. Then Baal, who's now the final boss of Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction. So he right before you go into and fight him, he's kind of on a throne and he summons several enemies to you. Those enemies are tough because you have to take them all out, and they're like, you know, mini bosses per se, and yeah, they are challenging to get through. And then Bale himself is a pretty challenging boss as well. But again, you'll hear of like Mephisto runs and Bale runs to get better items. Those are the ones that, yeah, again, you want to do to, you know, again, this is what this game is really grinding, getting items and getting to the higher level and sort of getting your character in all the best gear kind of thing. But the nice thing is that I remember back in the day that it almost seemed like you had to have, you know, this is your weapon and this is your helmet and this is your rings. And now it seems to have been a little bit tweaked. And again, I played this prior to replaying it recently. I probably played this, you know, 12 to 15 years ago. So it's been a long, long, long time since I did actually play it. So, and then of course, you know, you beat Bale and you are now completed the game. That's great. Haha, it is not done. So the game actually has multiple difficulties. So you go through it the first time, you've beaten normal, now you're on nightmare. You go through act 1 to 5 again. You beat that, now you're on hell. You go through act 1 to 5 again, and that's like the end of the game. So you kind of have to go through it 3 times, and it's just increasing in difficulty. One of the things that gets really, really hard is that they put in on hell is that every enemy has an immunity to something. So that could be lightning, fire, ice, poison, or physical. I think that's all there is. I don't think there's another one. Now, if you're like a barbarian, where your attacks are all physical, you come up to a physical immune, you're pretty much useless. You cannot do any damage. So you can't do the whole eggs in one basket on your skills kind of thing. There are some pretty rare items that can help either remove or lower the amount of immunity they have, so you can still do some damage. Maybe you do 20% of your damage instead of 0% of your damage, so at least it's better than nothing. But those, again, are incredibly hard to find. They're very high levels, so you may have to either run away or have a different strategy on those enemies completely. So, yeah, once you, of course, have beaten the game, then, you know, as people may say, the real game begins kind of thing. And that's hunting for all the items that you want to get your character just fully kitted out in the best gear they could possibly have. Now, speaking of the characters, there's 7 of them. So there's an Amazon, Necromancer, Barbarian, Sorceress, Paladin, Druid, and Assassin. And I think most of those are fairly self-explanatory. Quickly go over them. So the Amazon, they kind of have 2 paths they can take. They can take javelin and spears, or they can take bows / crossbows. And again, pretty straightforward. So me personally, I'm actually doing an Amazon, a Javazon, and that's a javelin Amazon. Hence, you know, Javazon. So that one there, the big things that I'm using, my big skills, and I'm not going to go into detail on the other ones, just the one that I'm playing, is an attack called Lightning Fury. So she throws one of her javelins, and you have a limited amount, but you can repair it, so you get them back. So you throw, it hits the enemy, and it explodes in lightning bolts. So I think I'm at like level 54 or something like that. I've maxed that out. So when it hits, it explodes into like something like 22 or 23 lightning bolts and hits other enemies. But I also have a skill called Pierce, which gives me roughly 50% chance for my javelin to go through an enemy and maybe hit another one. And so you can get some really big explosions of lightning, and it's almost like you benefit from attacking a larger group of enemies versus a smaller group. So, and that's one of the things where this character and this build are a little bit tricky on, is that one-on-one damage is okay. Group damage is just insane. Like, everything just melts in front of me. I have no issues with a massive group. In fact, it's actually much easier. I throw a couple of those bad boys in there, poof, she done, right? And then there's some passive skills that I'm looking to get. Again, not right now, I'm just focusing on the damage, but something like Valkyrie, and it comes, it's like a summon of another Amazon, not with the same skills that I have, but she's something kind of like as a sponge, so enemies can attack her rather than me. I did mention as well, I have the mercenaries. So each act has a different type of mercenary. The rogue, act 1 is like a rogue, just shoots bow and arrow. Act 2 is a guy with a spear, but he has auras, and that's actually the one I got. I'll explain what that is. Act 3 are kind of like a warrior mage sort of thing. Act 4 has none, sorry, so not every act, but Act 5 has barbarians, and they're, as a barbarian is, whack, whack, whack. So, as the mercenary that I have is a, what does he do? He has an aura called Holy Freeze, and so enemies within a certain close range to him will get slowed down. So especially on bosses, that's handy because then they can be slowed down, and that means they attack me less, meaning less damage done to me. You can get it where you can attack faster, but I'd rather have a little bit more, almost like defense, survivability, than having more faster attack. Just because, as I said, mine right now, I do plenty of damage. I'm not concerned about that sort of thing. So yeah, that's the one that I have, and it's cool because I looked it up. And again, I'm not ashamed of looking up any guides or anything like that. To be honest, I need as much help as I can get, to be honest with you. And I actually made a pole arm, or I got him a pole arm that has a skill that regenerates my mana, and it does like a 500+% increase in my mana regeneration. So I very rarely have to drink a mana potion to get any of that mana back. So I can just use my skills over and over again and have very little downtime just because of that. So as long as my mercenary is alive and close enough to me, I'm in great shape. And again, in big crowds, I pretty much take them out in 1 or 2 throws of my javelin. So they very rarely even get close to either of us. Now, as I said earlier, the immunities. So if I come up to an enemy that has a lightning immunity, then I'm in trouble because all my attacks are lightning. I did what I said you shouldn't do, which is eggs in one basket. I don't know if in the future I can maybe tweak something, but again, when I run into that, my mercenary is powerful enough to actually take out and do damage, which is surprisingly enough. I mean, you don't have to kill every enemy on the screen. You don't have to kill every unique enemy you find. You just have to get through pretty much to the bosses. And again, you know what? Play however you want, right? You don't have to play a specific way. So, as I said, so that's my character, the Amazon Jabazon. Necromancer, that one, I think fairly self-explanatory. You can have some poison attacks, you have some bone attacks, and then you have summoning. That's obviously the biggest thing for a Necromancer. You can summon skeletons and skeleton mages. You can summon all sorts of golems, like a stone golem. I think stone golem, earth golem, not sure. Blood golem is a really cool one. Fire golem is quite powerful. Iron Golem is actually neat because to summon it, you actually have to summon it from a metal weapon or piece of armor. I thought that was a cool mechanic. So you have to throw something down, and the better that is, I think the better armor it has as well. Barbarian on the next one. That one, again, very straightforward. They can use spears, they can use swords, they can use 2 weapons, and, go into like a frenzy of an attack, whirlwinds, stuff like that. Sorceress is, again, very straightforward. These are not like that unique classes. Again, the game came out now 23 years ago. It wasn't like groundbreaking. So Sorceress is fire, lightning, ice, and a multitude of spells to support them as well. Paladin. Paladins are actually quite interesting. They can use auras like my Act 2 mercenary, so they can have that same Holy Freeze aura. I mean, there's a bunch of different ones. You can have ones that make you attack faster, ones that make you just do straight more damage. You can have ones where it gives you elemental damage. So on those ones that are immune to physical, that's really handy. You can also have the defensive ones, just increase your defense more. You can have ones that make you attack and hit more often, like a whole bunch of different auras. So that's one tree that they have. And then I actually can't remember off the top of my head what other ones they have, but one of the builds that I used to do way back in the day was a Hammerdin, and that was where you used a skill called Blessed Hammer, and that kind of, you cast it as almost like a spell, and it spun a hammer going around you, and it was going further and further, kind of like almost like a spiral outwards, and it would hit enemies, and so you kind of get yourself in the middle, and you do this a bunch, and it takes out enemies as they come towards you, so very handy. So Druid and Assassin are actually characters that came in with the expansion pack. So those first 5 that I mentioned, those are the ones that came with the original game. Druid and Assassin, new. So Druid is a kind of all sorts of kind of things. So it can be just a spellcaster. So you can use earth magic, wind magic to do actual just magical damage, kind of like a sorceress. You can also transform yourself into a bear, and you can be a big hulking like tank of a character. You can transform yourself into a wolf where you're doing more damage, but you can take more damage too. So a few different options on that one. And then finally, assassin is you are very quack. You're very quick to attack. You do less damage per hit, but you do hits very quickly. You can have dual wielding like claws and things like that, and you can do poison damage on there. You can lay down traps, things like that. I personally never played much of the assassin, especially, but the druid not too much either. The other ones I played lots of. Necromancer I always wanted to be good at, but the necromancer got really, really hard when you were fighting bosses, because if the boss took out your skeletons, you needed corpses to summon them. And most bosses are in a complete separate room on their own with no other, minor enemies. So if you lost your, minions, you're kind of hooped. It's like game over for you. And so you have to go out, find more corpses to do, so on and so forth. And it made it more difficult. So something with that as well is that there is a multiplayer in this game. You could have up to 8 people in a game. So you could have, 1 or 2 necromancers, but then 2 or 3 barbarians, and they take the hits of the boss. And as you have more characters in the game, the difficulty went up. So then it kind of balances out. Because if the difficulty stayed the same and you had 8 characters in the game, it would be way, way too easy. So they scaled up the difficulty as you had more characters in the game. Now, one thing that they used to have in the game, and I mean they still do, but to activate it, it was a text command to do it. In Diablo II Resurrected, what they've done is they've actually made it just as an option. So I, who is playing a single player offline game, I cannot play with anyone else. My character can never play with anyone else. So I can, if I want, kind of simulate having other characters in the game to make it more difficult for me. However, with greater difficulty comes greater reward. More experience, I think you get better drops from enemies, the chance goes up sort of thing. So it's not like you're just doing it to make it more difficult. No, you do get something more out of it kind of thing. So yeah, that's the 7 characters. As I said, Amazon is who I chose to play this time. I don't know if I did another character right now. I couldn't tell you. I think it's more of we'll see what I'm feeling. I mean, maybe Assassin. That would be kind of cool, I think, because, as I said, I've never actually played an Assassin really in depth. So I think it would be cool to actually play it, try it out, sort of thing. So as I said, even though, yes, there is a story to the game, and the story is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I've just played through the game probably like 50 times. So, I mean, I'm kind of... The story, I'm like, okay, let's move along kind of thing. And that's why I think in Diablo 3, they came up with a mode called Adventure Mode, that once you played through the story one time with any character on your account, then every single character you can make can go into Adventure Mode, where it's really just grinding and finding weapons, leveling up, that kind of thing. So with that, as I said, items are so key to this game that's the biggest reason for the game. Items and just grinding. So there's different levels of items, different quality levels. So gray is trash. It's usually where it's like broken gloves or low quality sword. It's useless. If you literally had nothing in your hands, that's the only time it would be good, but you start off with basic items. The next one, which is the white, is common, and that's just your generic, like, nothing special. It's just like, here's a sword, absolutely nothing on there. You then get into magic and rare items. So magic is blue. That gives you maybe a couple different, modifiers on there. So you might get 4 to 8 extra fire damage, or, 5% magic find, or 10 dexterity, something like that. But only 1 or 2 of those things. Then you get to rare. And rare is probably going to be your most commonly found items that you're changing up. And so those ones can have a whole bunch of different attributes on it. You can have, 5 or 6, and there are so many different things you can have. Like I could name a bunch, but I mean, it's just, there's so many that you can have. One of the coolest ones is +1 or +1, something like that, to your skills. So in your skill tree, so as I said, Lightning Fury, I can only ever put 20 in there. That's it. But I can find items that do +1 to skills, or +2 to, javelin, spear skills. Then my Lightning Fury continues to go up past that 20, and you just have more damage with that, more bolts that fly out of it. So it's really important, especially like myself, this character, I didn't realize it, but the damage that I do with Lightning Fury has nothing to do with the damage on my weapon itself. So my weapon may do 7 to 21 throw damage. That's it. But if I find one that does, let's say, 80 to 100 throw damage, it would make no difference at all. It is purely on my skills for Lightning Fury. So realistically for me, I'm like, I don't care if it's a really high damage weapon with, let's say 6 things on there, but I have a low damage weapon with 8 things in there better, more dexterity or more, actually dexterity doesn't matter either, but more, different skills, like +2 to skills and, mana steal or life steal or, a faster attack speed or resistances, things like that. Those are more important to me than just raw damage. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. You can also get set items. So these ones are really neat. And what they are is they have their own, they're kind of like a mix between rare and magic items. They're better than magic, but not as good as rare as an individual item. However, if you get the whole set, and maybe the set is 4 things. Maybe it's gloves, a sword, armor, helmet, and... Oh, that's 4 things, yeah. So maybe it's all that, and then once you get the set, you kind of unlock even more things. So maybe when you have all the set, you have +1 or +2 to all skills, and you get 200% more damage or something like that. But the sets are really cool, but of course, finding sets are really hard because you have to find those 4 items, those 4 specific items, and they have to be set items. So, I mean, if you're going to get a whole set, definitely a lot of work for sure. Then the second last, let's call it, the last items that you can find are uniques. And these are kind of the really cool ones. The ones that when you see it drop, you're like, ooh, that's kind of cool. They're gold. And set items, sorry, I didn't say they're green, but unique items are gold. And so they are always the same. I don't think they vary when it comes to how much. Like some, rare items, it can be anywhere, let's say, for an example, from, 10 to 18% increase in damage, for an example. Whereas a unique item, that when that unique drops, it's always 50% no matter what. So they're not, like, impossible to get. I have a dozen or 20 or so on my character, and I'm not really grinding for anything like that. I've just been playing through the game. So the hard part, of course, is getting the unique item that you want. So for an example, my character, the Javazon, the unique item, the weapon that is kind of like the top tier of it is something called Titan's Revenge. It's a high-level javelin that's unique. So finding it, 1, you have to get a javelin to drop. 2, you have to make sure it's the higher level version of that javelin. And 3, it has to be unique. It's just, there's compounding... percentages that make it that much more difficult to actually get. So if you can get it, that is awesome. But it's hard to get for sure. But, I mean, with them being really hard, they are really, really good. Like, that weapon is obscenely good for this build that I have. It would be great, but challenging to get. Then the last kind of item, sort of, is something called rune words. So in the game, and I think it was in Lord of Destruction, I don't believe it was in the base game, you can get specific runes, and they're little items that drop, and then you can put them into weapons, armor, whatever it may be, that have sockets. And so a weapon may have a chance to have a socket. So for an example, I have a couple rune words equipped on me, and I'm drawing a blank on it, but pretty much what it is you'll have... So let's say, for instance, there's one called Ancient's Pledge. I'm using that one, I think. Yeah, I'm waiting. I have a better one coming eventually. But the Ancient's Pledge, what it is you get 3 rune words. It's Ral, Ort, and something else in a shield. I know, I'm giving you so much great information right now. But you get these 3 and you put it in a shield. And then with that, you get a rune word called Ancient's Pledge, which gives you lots of resistances and increased block chance and all these different things. So remember I had said earlier that my mercenary, they had a polearm that gave me that really, really good, mana regeneration, sorry. So with that, that's called Insight. So it's a 4-socket polearm, and it needs to be Ral, Tyr, Tal, and Sol. You have to put them in a polearm in that order to create this unique item called Insight. And funny enough, I got all those runes, and they're random drops. I grinded on that because I'm like, I know this would be really useful for me if I can get this on my mercenary sooner rather than later. So I grinded for all of them. I got them. And then I had to get a polearm that had 4 sockets. So I go ahead and I get a weapon, I think it was a Brandis stock with 4 sockets. So I'm like, perfect. And I pop in a Raw, I pop in a Tyr Sol, and all it is Raw Tyr Sol. It's not Insight. And then I realized that the Brandy stock is a spear type weapon and it has to be a polearm. So that was a forehead slap and a shake of the head there. But I then went and grinded again to get them. And you can use a specific item called the Herodric Cube to kind of make specific runes. It's a whole nother thing where you transmute them. So I was able to do that, I think, with one of those runes. So I didn't have to grind for all of them. And then I was able to find another weapon that was a polearm, not a spear, put it in, and then poof, now it's Insight. So that was a huge upgrade because, again, that made it so I pretty much don't even need to use mana potions anymore. I still have a few just in case, but realistically, I don't need to use them at all anymore. Excuse me. And then there's a couple other ones that I want to get. There's Spirit, which is a specific one to shields that I have to wait till the Hell difficulty to get. So I have most of those runes, but I'm not grinding to get them because, again, if I don't have the shield and I can't get it until I'm in Hell, there's not much of a point of me having it now and spending the time on it. And then there's other things, like there's a specific belt that'll take that 50% pierce that I have, add another 33% to it. With my plus to all skills that I have, I'd be at over 100% pierce. So pretty much every attack I do, every javelin that I throw is going to pierce through enemies. So it just gives you that even better damage on big crowds, which, I mean, I'm not in Hell yet. I'm in Nightmare, and I think I may have just beaten Diablo. I think I just got to, I'm in Act 5, actually. So I'm not in the hardest difficulty yet, and I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, okay, this is it's getting a little bit more challenging. It's still not too bad, but once I get to Hell, it's a big spike in difficulty. So I'll definitely need to have some better damage output at that point there as well. So there's a bunch of different rune words. I mean, I think there's well over 50. I don't know about 100, but there's quite a few up there for sure. So as I said, lots of items to get. Rune words kind of help because you get tons of runes throughout. You can also always go after a specific enemy and reload the game. And it's called the Countess. She always drops, I think, at least one rune word, and she'll always drop from a specific table depending on if it's normal, nightmare, or hell. So if you want one of the lower end ones, because it goes into a rune word, you just need to go and find it. You can just go down to normal, even if you're level 70. And then you can just go, and it'll be super duper easy, but you'll be able to go in there and, grab the rune that you need. And I think that probably covers it for, story gameplay. There's a lot in there. I mean, we're almost 38 minutes into this thing, and I haven't touched on any other category. But again, like the story, as I said, is a really, really good story. If you're not too keen on playing through the story, I'm sure there's YouTube videos that go through it. I actually have one on my sort of watch later of the whole timeline of Diablo 1, 2, 3, and then 4, which is coming out, I think, in about a month or so, which I'm pretty excited about, but probably won't play that day one because who knows what it's going to be like, of course. But yeah, there's some really, really cool stuff in the story there. And I feel like it pulls from some sort of, maybe not history, I don't think, but some books that were written on other things, some religious things in there, I'm sure. But it's a really great story, not just in 2, but all of Diablo's stories have always been absolutely fantastic. So, and then, the characters, items, all that fun stuff. So with that in mind, let's flip it on over to the music. In this game, the composer was a gentleman by the name of Matt Uelemon. I am not too sure how to say his last name, but it was Matt. So, I'll be honest, the music is good. Don't get me wrong. It's very atmospheric. It sets the mood that you are in a really dark, dreary hellscape of sorts. There are demons that have been released from hell, and you're, fighting all of them off. But I will be honest that, at least back in the day, I would have the music muted. I don't do this with a lot of games, but I would have the music muted and I would listen to music, and I'm pretty sure it was with Winamp, because it was, again, a long time ago, back in the early 2000s. And then I'm sure I purchased the music perfectly legally and everything through, the right channels. and I didn't use LimeWire or Kazaa. I don't even know if those are. I don't know. But I had that, and it's funny actually. One of those memories that triggers things for you is in playing Blood Brothers by Papa Roach in Act 3. You know, the rain's coming down, the lightning's flashing, and that song kicked on, and it's just, when I play in Act 3, it always reminds me of it, kind of thing. So, as I said, the music is good. I generally had it muted. However, when I'm playing through now, I'm playing on my PlayStation. I'm not blasting stuff at, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night while my family's trying to sleep. So I generally just keep it quiet with the music of the game itself. So with that, we do have a few songs that are good. They're a little, as I said, more moody, a little bit slower. So they may not translate the greatest through the podcast. However, we do have our OC remix, one of those on there, and a little bonus song that we will get to. So the first song that we're going to be talking about is Wilderness. Wilderness, it's a long song, a lot of really good parts in it. It's, again, moody, works well. It's actually the first song you hear outside of the rogue encampment, sort of Act 1. And again, I know I've done this a few times, but those songs that are the first, or those areas that are the first, just seem to hit different for me. So that one's good. Next on our list is Tristram. Now, if you ever played if you ever played the original Diablo, Tristram is the town that you go to save. In Diablo 2, it is destroyed, and that's actually where Deckard Cain, a classic character from Diablo series, it's actually being held captive in a cage. So yeah, you go to Tristram, you get in there, and you save him. Again, classic song. It is the intro song to this episode as well, I'm sure you noticed. And then we're going to move on to the OC remix. As I said, a lot of the songs are a bit too atmospheric for me to sit back and listen to and enjoy and actually focus on listening. Work great in the game. So our OC remix song, there was only one song for Diablo 2 that they had, so I'm actually going to dip into Diablo 1, but it is also a Tristram song, so maybe it works. So this song is called Wet Grass Inspired. It's a really cool, like, twangy song. Relaxing. It's got a little bit of rain in there. It works well. It's, again, moody, atmospheric, but it's a little bit more on the, hey, I can just listen to this on its own. Then this this next song is, I don't even know when I heard this originally. So this is the Deckard Cain rap. And I highly, highly recommend everyone go into the comments, into the description, click the link. It is an hilarious song. Whether you've played the game or not, it's just a lot of fun. And what's crazy is that the YouTube video of this person uploading it is 14 years old. So that will put it at, was that 2009? Somewhere around there. So yeah, I highly recommend, if you're going to listen to any one of the songs that I recommend, this is the one, because it's funny. Deckard Cain sounds kind of like Sean Connery, and he makes a note of that in the song. So highly recommend listening to that song for sure. Now is the fun part. So this is the time commitment of the game. As I said, yeah, beating this game is nothing too crazy, nothing to write home about. Getting to level 100, getting to, mastering that one character, finding those items, that's a whole other thing. Right? So beat the game, one thing. Getting to 100, that's a challenging thing to get to 100. That'll take you a long time. Getting everything you want for that build and getting those specific items, that is completely in a whole nother world. So with that, the replayability of this game, if you have the patience, and that's the hard part, but it's near infinite, right? If I were to say, well, there's 7 characters and there's multiple viable builds to get really, really high level and, get to 100 and take out all the enemies with ease. There's multiple per character. Let's say there's, to make it easy, roughly 20 builds that you can do. I mean, I don't even know how many hours I've spent on it, but as I said, I've been playing this and only this for the last roughly 2 weeks. So there's clearly a lot to it. So again, my personal time, I don't have a personal time yet because I'm still not done in my head. I don't know how long it took me to, beat through normal. Maybe like 10, 12 hours, if that. And that's only because I'm blasting through it. I know exactly where, well, maybe not exactly. I know pretty well where to go. I'm not reading the text that they're saying, the voice acting, all that stuff. I'm just, click, 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 go, go, go. On the how long to beat sort of, scale, the main story is 21.5 hours. And then the completionist is 96.5 hours. However, that is specifically our Diablo 2 Resurrected, and the completionist only has 4, polls, 4 entries. And one thing that I was looking around in how long to beat, you don't really have a definition of what's the definition of completionist? Well, you don't really have that per game. So for an example, I just did a quick look. If I took a look at Diablo 2, that one there, not Resurrected, the original Diablo 2, completionist is 248 hours, and that one has 30 polls. I don't know what the difference is, why it's so drastically different, but nonetheless, it's it's a lot of work for sure to get through it. And again, you make your own completionist. Is the completionist getting to 100? Is it getting to 100 with all characters, getting to 100 with all characters, getting all items? I mean, you're never going to be able to get all items because you can't even fit that many items in your, inventories and your stashes and things like that. There's hundreds of items. You're never going to be able to do that. And I say never, but like it'll be thousands and thousands of hours. I'm good. I don't need that. So definitely don't need to go down that path. The speed run of this game, again, is Diablo 2 Resurrected. That's the other thing. Again, you could look at Diablo 2, Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction, Diablo 2 Resurrected. I'm going to focus on Resurrected on this one. So for that one there are so many categories because not only is there, your classics like any percent, 100%, new game plus, things like that. You then have normal and hell. Then you have, for instance, remember I said you can simulate how many players there are? Well, you can have player 1 up to player 8. Then you have Sorceress and Amazon and Barbarian, and each one of these has all those. There's probably over 100+ different categories kind of thing. We're going to focus on just a handful. And mainly to show you, I wanted to point out it's the same category, but with different class. So any percent Sorceress, that one is been done by Novice Cho, 45 minutes, 10 seconds. And then we have any percent Amazon. Only difference is from Sorceress to Amazon, which again is the character I'm playing. That's by Boxer Kabati. That's 1 hour, 16 minutes, 22 seconds. That's a half an hour jump. And the biggest reason is I think the Sorceress is able to teleport. So you can shoot across the map so quick. You can teleport over a chasm. You can teleport through walls pretty much as long as it's on the screen or really close to the edge of the screen. If it's a little bit outside, you'll probably be able to teleport to it. Now, as I said, when you're playing this game, those maps are procedurally generated. So you don't know to go, left for a minute and then down for 30 seconds, you're in the next area. It's random. As I said, there are some specific, constraints of sorts. Like, in the first level, you'll always have something called the Den of Evil in the first area, and then you'll have the path that you can walk along to go to the next area. Well, that is always a constant. And again, there's other things, constant, not constraints. That's a better word for it. It's there are other constants in there. Again, I'm not speedrunning the game. I just know of them a little bit, sort of thing. So yeah, that's something that you can do. So you already know right off the bat, I'm going to go this way, because that is always the case, even though it's random. It's random with a limit kind of thing. So, yeah, as I said, the speedruns of this are crazy because, again, the randomness of the game itself just can throw your whole run into chaos, or it can give you an insanely good run, but you still have the skill level of the person. You still have the randomness of the enemies that you find, doing damage, not dying on anything. Because if you die, it's pretty much game over, right? You start over. There's no point in trying to get back because you lose so much time. So yeah, speedrun of games that are random like this, I find always quite interesting because I almost wonder, how do you even measure it because it's random. So, but yeah, it's cool seeing these speedruns. One of the Twitch streamers that I've watched a lot of Diablo 2 over the years of is Mr. Llama SC. He's kind of quite well known, I believe, in the Diablo community. He did play Diablo 3, but his game is still Diablo 2. And even then, just the original Diablo 2, or I guess Lord of Destruction, but not the Resurrected. He did play through the some of the Diablo 4 stuff, gave his thoughts on it, kind of thing. So he's still probably going to stick with Diablo 2, it sounds like. So yeah, that's the time commitment section. To put it in one simple, easy word, infinite. The time commitment is how much you want to put into it. You're not really constrained with, like, Super Mario World, I can beat it, and then maybe I can beat it quicker. There isn't I can beat it. You define your own end to this game, in my opinion. And now we have our patent pending kiddable section. So it's tricky, to be honest with you. I, obviously I was playing the game and I'm like, yeah, I'll throw this on the podcast. It'll be great. I want to chat about it, stuff like that. There are some games that the parent of the parent playing video games podcast part don't really mesh, to be honest with you. And this is a great example of one. Now, don't get me wrong. Kids are smart, way smarter than we probably give them credit for. So they'll probably be able to pick games up fairly quickly. Playing on a PC, the original with a mouse and keyboard, I feel is just a little bit more challenging for some kids. As I said, I've been playing it on the PS5, Diablo II Resurrected, with the controller. In general, easier to control. However, because I was quite used to playing it on the keyboard and mouse, there's just some things that were just a bit weird. Like a little inconsistent with the controls across different screens is what it felt like. But I eventually kind of got used to them, so I'm much better now. As I said, you can modify the count of the players at 1 to 8 in the option if it's a single player game. I don't know if you can do that in the online game. As I said, I'm not playing online. I don't really have any desire to play with random people, and no one I know plays this game. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to play the single player offline version, then be done with it, kind of thing. I think the online one as well is that you can run into some lags. So if you're playing and it lags out on you, you'll just die, which was always a fun time when playing a hardcore character, which is pretty much you die and your character's done. You can't resurrect back in the day. So yeah, definitely don't want to be that. And then there's the setting of the game. You're in hell, demons. Probably not the most kid-friendly game in that sense. I'm almost certain it's rated R or 18 or MA, mature. I think that's the high rating or whatever it is. Yeah, I'm almost certain it's rated that. Again, the graphics aren't, mind-blowing. In Resurrected, they look fantastic. The lighting is really, really good, actually. But, I mean, it is clearly obvious that you were destroying and just melting away enemies with blood and whatnot, right? It isn't as, I'd say, gruesome as Diablo 3 when it comes to that. But again, like, the settings are they're kind of scary. It's dark in a lot of places. The music, as I said, is very great when it creates that atmosphere. So it's probably not the most kid-friendly. So if I were to give this a kidable rating, which I have not created a rating system for, it would be low. It would not be the most kidable game. But again, the kids are, so bendy when it comes to all sorts of things and adaptable. That's the word I'm thinking of. That they can adapt and play this if you, were to put it in front of them, kind of thing. But again, as I said, the setting story probably not the most kid friendly, so fairly low on the list. Alrighty, so now it is time to wrap it up. My rating. Let's start with that. 10 out of 10, straight up. It's one of my favorite games. As I said, I played it for a long time in the 2000s, and then World of Warcraft took over my life pretty much. So it was the game that I always went back to. It was always there, always had great gameplay mechanics. I never really, not necessarily got bored with it. I would get bored with it, but I always had the itch to go back to, maybe either try a different build or continue looking for that one unique, that really great item that would just take my build from being great to being just insanely good, right? So I always like going back to it. The first time you play through it, the storytelling is just so good. The voice acting is great. Most of the NPCs that you meet are great. Some of them are kind of dumb, but that's okay. That's normal. The story is just so great that you get so immersed in it. And then It's almost like the game, as I said, begins after you beat it, because now you get it. The replayability is there, right? You can keep going. You can keep going into Nightmare. You can keep going into Hell. You can keep going until you find the items that you want. It might not be for everyone simply because of that. Because of the nature of it is that it is grindy. Of course it is. That's kind of the whole point. But nowadays, back in the day when I played this in the early 2000s, I was on a single monitor and that's all I did. I played Diablo. Now, as I sit here, I have 2 monitors on my PC. I have an iPad. I have an iPhone. I can play this with PlayStation Remote Play on my iPhone, iPad, on the laptop while I'm watching something on TV. While I'm sitting with my wife, I can play this on my laptop. I can also, play it on the TV and watch something. There's so many ways that you can kind of do almost like a multitasking kind of thing. And it's really kind of great in that aspect, is that you can kind of just play it somewhat mindlessly while watching something that you want to watch, or watching The Simpsons or The Office, something that you've seen 6 times before, where you kind of just want to consume information but also play a little bit, but the playing doesn't take all your mental calories to focus on. Being able to kind of have that as an option, or being able to focus on it fully, you get that choice, is great. And then as well, like, you can just jump into it every now and then, right? You don't have to play all of the characters all in one go and continue and be done. Getting back into the game is so quick and easy. The learning curve and remembering how to play is so simple. So it's not a complex game in the slightest when it comes to that. It has a bit of a learning curve. But other than that, yeah, you're kind of good to go. And there's a great resource that I've used for not only Diablo 2, but Diablo 3 as well. It's called Icy Veins online. They have great builds. And as I mentioned, the Twitch streamer, Mr. Llama SC, he actually has written several guides and made several videos of a lot of the characters. So there's so many resources out there for you. If you want to, you can just follow it to a T and make that build great. Or you could kind of, take it, go your own way, or don't even look at a guide. Just figure it out. The hard part is that you can't just respec, whenever you want. So if you make a mistake and you're level 70 something, yeah, I don't know if you say you wasted hours, but maybe you put hours into it that you're like, oh man, that's a bummer kind of thing. I shouldn't say you can't respec. You actually can respec 3 times in the game, but that's obviously something specific. So, and with that, that is gonna do it for me. I had a really good time with this one, to be honest with you. I felt like I was, loosey-goosey kind of thing, and just had a lot of fun with it. I just really do enjoy playing this game. It took me a long time to pick it up, actually, because Resurrected came out in 2021, and I was doing some other things, and decided to not buy it, and then thought about it. And actually, I saw that it was on sale, because I got Diablo 2 Resurrected, and I got Diablo 3 with the Reaper of Souls expansion, and I think a little bit of DLC or something like that, for like 23 Canadian dollars, which is like nothing, really. It was surprisingly cheap. But what was funny, I originally was just going to get Diablo 2 Resurrected for 19, and then I saw, I can get Diablo 3 for $4 more. I haven't even installed it, downloaded it, whatever. I don't even know if I will anytime soon, but I'm like, $4, why not, right? And again, like Diablo 3 and Diablo 2 are similar in that sense, where I'm like, I just like going into it and playing it and, just kind of spending time there, So as I said, thank you very much. I do appreciate everyone listening. It means a lot to me. The next episode, as always, is in 2 weeks, and we will end with our traditional dad joke. What did the baby corn say to the mama corn? Where's the popcorn? And as I say that, I can smell that my wife made popcorn downstairs. So I am going to go see if there's any left and I can munch on. Have a great evening, day, morning, whatever it may be. As I like to say, hug your kids, hug your wife, hug your whatever you want. Hug your stuffed animals, your dogs. Just give someone a hug. Hugs are great. Thanks again for everyone listening, and we will see you next time.